My name is Henrik Pedersen. I have been for the last 4 years driving an innovative initiative in Siemens aiming towards lowering the cost associated with operating wind turbines. So the initiative in basics is about taking data that is generated from sensors in wind turbines and turning this into a business value. So in this presentation, you are going to see the complete value chain. So you will see how we're transforming the measurement directly from the sensors in the wind turbine into a useful business impact in the other end, sending out service technicians to the wind turbines. So just to set the scene around a wind turbine, you may say it's a very simple machine. We have 3 blades going around driving a generator. How complex can that be? Well, wind turbines have evolved quite a bit over the last decades. It's big. Those of you who came here on an Airbus 380, you thought that was big. This is the Siemens 7 megawatt wind turbine. It has a power equal to 10,000 horsepowers going through the rotor into the generator. The complexity of the wind turbine, the electrical documentation, the schematics for the systems in this turbine alone is more than 3,000 pages. It's a large book. The control software high-level description is 1,400 pages. So it is a complex machine. It is 3 stories high inside the nacelle. The amount of data that it generates amounts to more than 400 megabytes, and this is compressed data. This is discrete sensor data that comes out of the wind turbine and is collected in a database in Denmark. A modern wind turbine has well over 10,000 data channels, tags we can interface to, ask for temperature, pressure, different stuff that we can model on from the wind turbine. So what is the business objective of this? Well, usually we have an agreement with our customers that we service these wind turbines once per year. And for offshore wind turbines, it's relatively important that we do not visit them when it's not needed because it's quite expensive. But sometimes problems do appear in the wind turbines, and these are faults. These are not failures. There's a difference because a fault is something that is broken inside the wind turbine but does not stop the wind turbine. So this could be like if we have a ventilation fan in a controller cabinet, or if there's a problem with a pressure system or something. Turbine is still operational, but it is the kind of problems that if we do not address them in due time, they will develop into failures. So these are the bad guys. These are the ones we want to avoid, because this is when the turbine is no longer able to produce electricity. So the trick, of course, would be to avoid these failures by addressing the faults in due time so that we can address it and fix the problems while we are in the turbines for doing scheduled service. So now, like you see on the left here, there's actually 2 benefits from this system, because what we initially did was that we designed the models to look for failures and problems so that we could avoid it in the future. But if we have a model in place that can verify if the system has a problem, quite often the same model can also tell us if the turbine system is actually working as it should be. So when we look at the items or the tasks that we have to perform when we do scheduled service on the wind turbines, we can actually reduce that as well and take up to 20% of these items, the inspections of the wind turbine, out of the scheduled visits, because we can do this by analyzing the data offline. And it of course leads into all the other values that helps bringing down the cost associated with operating wind turbines. Now, we often like to compare wind turbines to this machine. There's a lot of similarities, and the way we work with data also looks a lot like it. It's quite impressive what these guys can do with this machine. There's a lot of data analytics going on, cutting edge technology. There's a lot of money involved, competition as well. But and also an interesting aspect is that when you're on the racetrack, you do not want to have a stop when you're driving a car like this. You want to make sure you get everything fixed while you're in the pit. Same thing with an offshore turbine. Fix everything and doing scheduled service and avoid all the stops when the wind is blowing. Another complex system that we could compare to is people like you and me. Currently, we know more about the health condition of 10,000 wind turbines than is known about any of you sitting in this room. I hope you're able to tell me if you're sick, which I hope you're not. About modeling, how do we model this? We talk about fixed limits, dynamic limits. If we take a measurement on the brakes of this race car here, and we measure 300 degrees Celsius, then we need to decide, is this good or bad? Well, it depends, right? It depends on the pressure that we apply to the brakes, but it also depends on other factors. And this is really important, and this is especially important when we look at data produced by a wind turbine, because everything is shifting and dynamic and depending on the environment, weather, whatever. But if you consider the race car here, the speed of the race car also has an impact on the temperature of the disc brakes. Even if you have waterfall on a racetrack, that may also have an impact on the temperature because the cooling effect is twice as much when the air goes through the brake system. And then, of course, the entire history of the car. Have we been driving fast? Have we been making a hard brake? Or have we not been making a hard brake? So all these factors needs to be taken into consideration before you can create a useful model. Now, if we go back to the guy in the hospital here, if you imagine that he's been lying calm at rest here for 4 hours, so this is an adult male, nurse comes in, she measures his heart rate, what would we expect? Something like 70 or 80 or something. Now the nurse comes into the room and she measures his heart rate and she sees it's 110. So she thinks this guy is ill, we may give him some medicine or call a doctor or whatever. Now what if the guy is somehow attracted to the nurse? So every time the nurse walks into the room, his heart rate is going up. I'm not sure they are even taught that in medical school. But if we want to model the heart rate of this guy, we need to include the nurse attraction effect into the model so that each time the nurse walks into the room, we just take 50 or 30 off his heart rate and then we normalize it. And we say, this guy is not sick. Exactly the same journey we have been taking with analyzing data produced by wind turbines. It's very important to understand the physical world. This is our world. This is what we live with. So 10,000 wind turbines in the fleet producing data for an average of 6 years. This is 60,000 years of experience. So these turbines are in all kinds of environmental conditions in New Zealand, Texas, Norway, wherever. So this is the same as having one wind turbine and putting it all around the world for 60,000 years, taking measurement from 400 channels and storing all that data in a database, which we have. And this is an interesting file of information. And this is actually, a lot of the data actually doesn't leave the wind turbine, it stays in the turbine because the resolution is too high even to travel through the internet. And this is the amount of discrete values we measure every week in a wind turbine and store it on the hard drives. So what is inside the models? We actually started off with the assumption that if we just looked at all these data and applied some kind of an analytic method, we would see all the deviations and trends and whatever and get a lot of information about the performance of the wind turbine, but that's not how it works. If you look at the data generated from a wind turbine, the sensor data, temperature, pressure, whatever, everything is shifting, everything is noisy, everything is patterns, everything is deviations. We were completely lost. It was only at the time where we introduced the domain knowledge, the understanding of how a wind turbine usually should operate, that we really made a big step. So instead of designing models just to look for deviations in data, we designed the models like this machine. So every single model that we are running now on the turbines has a specific purpose. It looks for a specific problem based on specific types of variation, deviations in the data. And when it pops up and shows there's a problem, we know what the problem is as well. But of course, it runs on high-performance computers in this piece of software. So every single model is 100 or 1,000 lines of code. And if we look at the content of the code, of course, a lot of it is analytics. So this is, the 20% is analytical methods like linear regression analysis, statistics, average, whatever you can apply of analysis on your data. But the 20% is, we also have learning algorithms. Like we have the 60,000 years of data. We could also train neural networks by linear regression and so on. But this is really not the most important part of the models. The most important part of the model is like, this could be considered to be the black box model. These are just training and learning on the data. This is the white box models. These are the models that are based on rules about what we know from the wind turbine. When are we starting the ventilation fans? What are the rules and the strategy about pitching the blades? What is the strategy of adjusting the pressure in a hydraulic system and so on? So if we want to compare two different work approaches here. This is when you look at the wind turbine from the outside. You can do a very naive and very simple model of a wind turbine. I mean, you have wind coming in and you have electricity coming out. So there's a power curve model. There's a relation between the two, and you can take a look at that. Actually, this is the kind of products that is offered to many of our customers, so that they can apply some kind of analytic tool, and often they are promised that this will help them improve the performance of their wind farm. But quite often, they are asked by themselves to set in the threshold. What would be the limit? When do you want to have a notification of an underperforming wind turbine? So this is the analytic tool as it stands alone. But when you have a detection here, you'll get a notification that there is an underperforming wind turbine. And then you start a lot of investigation. And we know this is how we used to do it, and we still do this when we have problems on wind turbines, because we didn't cover everything yet with the models. Then you will need to include or get into a discussion with some experts. Maybe we need some more data from the wind turbine. Maybe we have some meetings, we have some iterations, we talk to another expert, we get some more data. And when we have a very good idea about what the problem is, we need to create an action plan. We need to decide what to do when we get to the wind turbine, what to bring, spare parts, whatever. A lot of information. And we know that this usually takes hours. Sometimes it takes days. It could actually take weeks from we detect a problem till we have a solution in place. If we compare that to the way we now have implemented model-based diagnostics, this is the complete assembly line. This is the value chain. When the model that was designed like the Mars rover flags up a problem, then we know where the problem is. We also know what the problem is. We also know how serious the problem is. And when we combine this information with all the other system, the metadata around the wind turbines and these systems, we can give a very accurate troubleshooting guide to our service technicians. So this is an example with a pressurizing tank in one of the cooling systems on the D7 turbine you saw before. So when this flags out, we can actually tell the service technicians, you have to go to the left inside the turbine, down below a cover. There is a pressure tank. It has most likely lost its pressure. And you have to look at the connection hoses. You have to bring a hose clamp, hose system, pressurizing tools. You need to bring a new pressure tank. And you need the certain skills to operate on the cooling system, high temperature. Maybe you are close to some high voltage or whatever. And we can put in schematics, we can put in work instructions, everything completely automatically. And that means as soon as there's a deviation detected by this model, and the model flags up that there's a problem, all of this information is fully automatically combined into a work package and dispatched to the person, the service planner, who has the responsibility to send out the service team to fix the problem on the wind turbine. So this is the output. It goes directly into our escalation system. And if we consider this work stream that takes hours, days, maybe sometimes weeks, this approach has an average case evaluation time of less than 800 milliseconds. So this is a lot faster because we have put all the information that we needed in front of the decision, and we have put a lot of information after the decision directly into the system based on the characteristic of this individual diagnostic model. And this is the amount we have. Actually, currently we have 563 diagnostic models now running on the entire fleet of 10,000 wind turbines, and when you combine it, it sums up to 1.7 or 1.8 million analysis that is generated every week. So that means that for a specific channel, we generate like 3 weeks of expected values, and then we compare that to the measured values, and then in a graphical representation, this is decided by the system if there is a deviation or not. The latest development we're looking at now is automizing this system completely, because if we have an expert looking into the data in this scenario, maybe a special graphical representation of what a problem looks like, and we also have the decision, did he actually choose to send out service technicians to this problem? Then we have the symptom, and then we have the decision. Now, what we did was that we took about 1,000 system expert decisions, and we ran them through a supervised learning system. And then we did a blind test. And now we have achieved an accuracy of 99% compared to what the diagnostic experts would decide based on the visualization, compared to what this network does. So this is more on the statistical side. Like I mentioned, 563 models now is running, and we have some pipeline prototypes. And this is an important number, because if you want to talk about the business value of this, it's not that simple to measure. But what we are now allowed to do when we measure the KPI of this system is that if you consider that we have a model detecting an issue on a wind turbine, that this is something that doesn't stop the wind turbine right at this moment. If we could take an example like a ventilation fan in a controller cabinet, it's supposed to evacuate heat from the controller cabinet. If the fan is seizing up, the temperature gets shifted inside the cabinet. But this is not important if we are in the cold season. Turbine is completely well, it runs perfectly because it's in the winter season. But if we get into April or later on, this might be a problem for the wind turbine because the ambient temperature is going up. And at one point of time we need the ventilation fan to take the heat out of the system. So if this is detected and we manage to replace this ventilation fan during a scheduled service or another visit to the turbine, we actually expect that we have saved an unplanned service visit to a wind turbine. And an unplanned service visit on an offshore wind turbine is somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 euros. We need to send out 2 skilled technicians. They always go 2 by each other to the wind turbine, and they go by an expensive boat, helicopter or whatever. And we have weather windows. Sometimes we cannot visit these offshore turbines for 3 weeks because the waves are too high for the service vessel to attach to the wind turbine. So we'll lose a lot of production. So if you consider that we have already detected 20,000 possible failures at a value of between 1 and 5,000 euros, you can multiply it and you get a good number about the business impact of running a system like this in our business. Now, when we talk about these future failures, we detected these future failures. You can say, okay, did we actually have that many problems on the wind turbines? Yes, we did. But like I mentioned, they didn't stop the turbines. So this compares to if you go out to the highway, let's say you stop every car going by. As they are driving on the highway, they are operational. There's no problem with them. But if you put them into a car mechanic, an expert, he will most likely be able to find a problem on every second car at least. Maybe the timing belt is being worn out. Maybe there's a brake light is loose. Maybe you have rust. Maybe your brake pads are being worn out or something. And this is the same. Now we are beginning to see problems that we didn't know were there, but we used to discover them when the turbines suffer from a stop. Turbine stop alarm, unable to operate. Service team go to the turbine. Now we can see this. They are being flagged up by the models before it happens. There's a problem with the pressure. There's a problem with the temperature. And we can look into it, and we can actually send out this remediation plan immediately. So the last slide, we're kind of proud of this, because we were actually nominated for, this is the first Werner von Siemens Award ever in the category Ingenuity. And you can imagine when we put up an initiative like this for an internal award, we are being looked over the shoulder. So this is not something that we just say we can or something we thought we did. It was really working. And we did not get the award for modeling data on the turbines. We actually got the award because we have completed the entire assembly line. So we took the data from the sensors, we got all this data fixed and adopted to the system, and then we built the models, which is only maybe 20%. We saw that also on some of the other slides. And then we also connected the last 40% afterward. So we tied this completely into the service business, and the output is pre-described service packages that goes out to the service technicians that has documented value. So that ends my presentation.
Thank you very much.